Alright, and good morning. So this is a series of videos that's on arguably being a conscientious consumer. I'm going to, in say 20 minutes or less than 20 minutes, let's talk about if you're trying to game in the PC space, that is if you consider yourself a PC gamer or looking at investing and becoming a PC gamer. And yes, it's a big investment and it's an ongoing cost. It's a big ongoing investment. PC gaming, right? We're going to look at why it is that the big corporations are desperate to get a little bit of your coin, and therefore the way that you're going to be treated as a consumer. Okay, 20 minutes or less. So, okay, first and foremost we have to look at the platform holder. Okay, so they're an unscrupulous group, bastards. It's a company, so let's not make out like they're people, right? They're not going to make decisions that benefit people, right? So hang on, you're saying stop injecting your personal take on this, stop getting away from the facts, let's just give me cold hard facts. Okay, it's 20 minutes, but we've got to make it a little bit emotional. You're not going to remember any of the aspects of this video, right? So Microsoft as a corporation, generally the worst. If there's ever an alternative to them, the product will be generally better. And there's a range of reasons for that. They are a paint by numbers company. Case in point, their consoles are just paint by numbers consoles. They try to make out and represent that they're better than the competition, but they're not. Generally in a real world usage experience, consumers come to learn that, and that's why they've been unable to sell a console for about 10 years now. They've been losing money in the console space. Why does this matter to PC gaming? Well, it does, because in order for Microsoft that's hemorrhaged money for over a decade in the console space, they need to be able to recoup that money. Now they did have, probably more than a decade ago, a multi-tiered plan that was going to make the money in the console space, but that requires affecting quite profoundly and quite deeply the PC gaming space in order for this vision to come true. So aspects of it, okay, so the console space being so bad really matters, right? But I've done a video prior to this one on that. Probably go to that one, and then I might be able to cover some of the importances of how much PC gaming is being crippled and held back. Gimped is the term I use, getting in mediocre performance, right? And that's what Microsoft will do on a PC gaming space to ensure that they get money over in the console space. People are going, what? You're bad. They make money in the PC space. Not really. Okay, so when you sell a console, there's three pillars of income, right? This is less than 2 minutes, right? Go watch the other video. But when you sell licensed peripherals, so gaming accessories, right? When you sell network costs annually, and for any piece of software sold, you get a little bit of the money, right? So they've deprecated their own industries. They don't get any of this. If they don't sell consoles, they don't get the upgrades. Look, they do make a little bit of money on the solid state drives that go into those consoles because they're very, very basic hardware. No controller chip would be my guess. So they make top dollar on them. They don't really sell a lot of games because of the nature of their own beast that's, they've just got deep pockets, and they've realised that we're losing a war. At no level are we an attractive product, so we'll just give you everything under the notion of what's called Games Pass. And they just stack it up and give you everything. So arguably they don't really make much in the way of sales, because they don't make a lot of the unit sales in the base instance, and because they're really focusing on the cheap console, not the big console. They're not really an attractive proposition to people. Over time they will sell a lot of consoles in the cheap market space, but those purchases will be aligned with the Games Pass model, and so they're not really making any money in the software space. And so the other one is network costs, and that's the one that deeply affects the PC gamers, because if you're a PC gamer, you do not need to pay an annual cost for your networking of gaming, right? That's pretty important, right? So Microsoft has no interest in gamers on PC, right? They know that whatever PC exists as a solid gaming platform, that it will be competition to them, right? So you could say, but they do support PC gaming. Well, they do in the short term, right? You've got to understand how they're working and what their long-term plan was, which was to eventually move gamers over to the console space. We know this. If you look at the Games Pass model and you look at how it works on the PC, and you look at how they patch their games for the PC, and you look at what the support is in the PC space and how it certainly is a second-class citizen to the console, yeah, that's all pretty significant. But they will move gamers over to console eventually, right? So this is why this video, a little bit preemptive, right? It's an education video. It is conscientious consumering. You've got to make some intelligent decisions. You need to think for yourself, because it's your hard-earned cash that you'll be spending on entertainment, right? Now, I've been a PC gaming technician since before the 90s, arguably. Yes. I was, Double Dragon and all that sort of stuff on a DOS level, right? I'd be running hacks to make Marble Madness work because it required a CGA monitor, and I'd make it work on monochrome, right? So even back then, you know, I'm the kind of guy that would overclock the PS2 bus to make my mouse work quicker, right? Like the update rate on it. So I know these things. I've always run either multiple video cards, sometimes multiple, crazy amounts of hardware. I've made it work no matter what. And that's been my profession, right? A couple of times in life, that's been my primary income source. I did get out of it with the advent of Windows 10 because it's a highly unethical product, and Windows 11 is just that times 10. Right? It's just so bad. It's really something you don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. So, in the PC gaming space, right, because they own forced updates of the platform, right, they can force driver updates, they can force the platform updates. The system updates is kind of important, right? There's a lot of things they can do to deprecate the PC gaming space. So if you start working with me for a second, right, just for the next 15 minutes or less, just humour me and just believe from a second from my point of view, rather than going, no, you're wrong, right? Just see it like, okay, this is what's happening, because it is. What they can do, right, because they're in bed with a bunch of companies. I'll give you an example. Okay, well, maybe not yet in the video. You're like, don't build up a 1-2 punch. Don't make it a good video. Yeah, you're right. Let's call it a practice video. This is the short version of it. I'm not reading off a script. If I was actually covering all the points, you could actually see just how bad or how deep the rabbit hole goes, it would be a very convincing spiel. I'm not trying to do that. This is just a really quick, just to follow up on yesterday's video, really just to be able to follow up on the fact that this is a thing that's happening and that consumers should be aware. Okay, so the Games Pass model on PC doesn't really work. That software's not to the same caliber, and it doesn't cover the same gamut of what is happening in the console space. If the games on PC are easily deprecated, so I bought Forza Horizon 3. It had to be an Xbox game, and I literally had to buy an Xbox game, but I could install it on PC, and it was the most subpar game, and it had the most amount of hoodwinks in it. I've got a video, one of the first videos I did on this channel, that actually looks in a really positive light. I actually able to get the game working when no one else could, to make it run smoothly. Very few people could get it to run smoothly, and so I did a video over 3 parts to actually go, this is it. But because Microsoft's losing out in the console space, right, they've got to convince developers to write for them. And there's no software being sold in their space because they're giving all the games out for free. They've got to convince developers to write for them. So what they do is, first and foremost, they misrepresent the numbers of Xboxes being sold. And to do that, they actually count PC platform installs. Every time a Microsoft operating system is installed, they go, oh, that's an Xbox console. When it isn't. And they have no intention of servicing it with games like an Xbox console, right? So during the rollout of Win 10, it was being accidentally rolled out on people's machines over and over again. Same with Windows 11 and the upgrades to it. There's reasons why these things are for free. They're desperate to convince developers that they've actually got a lot of Xboxes in the wild. They'll never actually really release the numbers of consoles sold, and they really are determined to say that the Xbox software on PC makes your PC an Xbox console. Right? So, yeah, it isn't really. But the depth of which they go to make the games run really poorly on the PC, and Forza Horizon was a classic example. You had to go in and right-click on your cores in like the resource manager or task manager, arguably, and set them to low priority. Right? If you set the resolution to not high priority, right, or not high is probably a bit too far, but one down from the top, basically things you would expect to still work. But if you actually set it to low, it for some reason would work. It was the opposite of the way it should be set. There was so many things in it that were the opposite, like the anti-aliasing. If you set it to the highest level, it ran quicker than if you set it to the lowest level, which of course if you were having performance issues, you would be thinking it would be the other way around. And the game would, each time you turn it on, it would optimise. If there's any change on your PC, and they could make changes on your PC because they could force driver updates. They forced a driver's update that made it take 10 minutes to load the game. First time I ever responded in the Forza forums by saying, oh, don't contact AMD, anyone. We've already done that, and everyone's saying, oh, you didn't buy AMD, did you? That's your mistake right there. Okay, I'll cover you NVIDIA people in just a second. I'm an ex-NVIDIA user. I've just bought just about every one of their good cards over the years, and ethics moved on because they're screwing you harder than bloody Microsoft is. They've actually got to make money on the hardware in an individual basis. But yeah, with Forza, for over a month, the AMD drivers, older set, just wouldn't work, and a guy got kicked off the forums because he was able to hack the new drivers to be accepted, and but yeah, irrelevant. Like I got kicked off the forums for 245 years because I sort of said, oh, hang on, he was just trying to help everyone, And yeah, the 10-minute start time, needlessly, then it would optimise your PC, and then it would set worse than Xbox settings generally, and it would set you to 30 frames a second. It would just make it so that the game was just pure jank, and you had to go into the back end of the system at so many levels to hack it, basically, to get it up and running, and put on a great big page file, even if you had fast solid state drives and tons of RAM. And and then when they got access to the Xbox Scorpio hardware, they detuned the PC game, finally sort of let it to be multi-core, and finally you got your frame rate up, but the draw distance had all been pulled in, and PC Ultra was just useless. So that's them doing it, and they did the same Flight Sim when they finally let the multi-core pack come to the PC version of Flight Sim was after the Xbox version released, so they could get it working on potato-powered console, because they got to convince consumers that those potato-powered consoles are nearly as good as the many thousands of dollars you're putting into your PC. The problem is all that money you're putting into your PC, and I touched on it a second there with Nvidia being very bastardy, but look, if I start talking about them, I've given up more than half my video. Look, okay, so with The Witcher 3, we caught them out with Hairworks. They were trying to cripple against the competition. They basically go with the attitude of, it doesn't really matter if it doesn't work well on our hardware, as long as it works worse on the competitor's hardware. Right? The whole concept of RTX or ray tracing was the next evolution of Hairworks, where they went, okay, well, the competitors have just optimized their cards. They've dropped making their cards for Hollywood, which is where silicon companies would make all their money. They went with, so AMD, the competitors, went, okay, well, we're not really winning this war. What we'll do is we're in all the consoles. Consoles have the most amount of chips sold, most amount of software developers are writing for the console chips, because it's a stable platform, you make really great software. So AMD went, okay, we'll cut out the bit of the die that we generally dedicate to the features that Hollywood needs. This is the bit of the die that for yonks Nvidia would cripple through drivers to 1/64th or about 1/64th the performance, like floating point performance, just through drivers, because that way you could sell several $1,000 video cards to people in Hollywood or renderers, and then sell basically the same silicon without any redesign. You can just turn off bits of it, basically make it less effective through drivers, and that's what they would sell to consumers. Yes, they did. Fermi architecture. Go look it up. Standard thing, standard operating procedure, right, for Nvidia. They knew this, right? Through drivers you can control stuff. So somewhere around about the 7 series of graphics cards, where I had one of the flagship cards, we could realise that the performance of the next generation cards had jumped a little bit too much in line. And they'd done the standard thing. We could see it in The Witcher, where they were using technologies they bought up in the market unethically to kill out competitors and then sort of deprecate and never use it. PhysX, yeah, they never really implemented the full PhysX library. They never really did anything to improve it. They didn't give us the reasons why PhysX would have been good. We needed a dedicated PhysX processor, but anti-consumerist and whatnot. Everyone's got to be competitive, and that's why the PC space isn't really that much fun. The nature of Hairworks was that it was basically designed with numbers that would run worse on the AMD hardware, and they had to do it with ray tracing, right? So we caught them out with The Witcher. They went, oh, oops, yeah, look, we haven't done that right, we'll fix it. And they did. But the problem is like any of my hobbies, like audio, consumers are a white belt or yellow belt. The vast majority of people say, oh, we're really happy with that. So the companies aren't held accountable. They don't have to fix their products. So that certainly happened. And over time, if enough people like myself aren't calling the companies out, there's no reason for them to fix the product again. So what we saw with Hairworks and The Witcher at that time was that they're quite willing to accidentally drop off last year's product and make it that this year's product looks really enticing. They're quite willing to, that wasn't so much Hairworks, but we saw it with the release of the 1060 versus the 780, sorry, the 960, whatever card came over, it was the 1060, I think. It wasn't commensurate with the performance, and that's what they do now through drivers. They just regulate it about every 18 months and drop the old cards off, make it like the new cards, the baby ones look good. But yeah, with Hairworks, they just chose numbers artificially in a little black box in software that everything had to run through all this code. If you're a software developer and used the Hairworks code or the PhysX code that they were using for it, they chose a tessellation number that was just particularly weaker on the AMD hardware. And they just went, yeah, we'll just use that feature extensively, and therefore it'll run poorly on the competitors. We don't mind if it runs poorly on us. As long as their cards look crap at doing it, we'll sell more cards. And so that's what ray tracing is. That right when AMD cut out the bit of the die that was really good at doing Hollywood, right, and basically light sourcing and ray tracing, because that's what your Bugs Life and all those things were doing, is really complex stuff. They actually made a really good graphics card. Nvidia were really freaked out. Just went, okay, what can we do to compete against this? And basically went, well, what's the bit of the die they just cut out? What was that good for? Okay, now we're going to double down on making that the feature that the whole industry is going to go forward with. And again, they just choose numbers that aren't really effective. There's a reason why you've got to buy the latest cutting edge card to just get 60 frames a second at whatever's consumer resolution they're pushing at the time, just to make your games work, right? They just choose numbers that aren't very good. And they're basically gone from the market now that Unreal Engine 5 is coming out with Lumen. That's sort of platform or software agnostic, hardware agnostic. It'll run on anything, and that kind of puts an end to the whole like ray tracing, path sourcing, if you're Chinese maybe. It's all that whole market is kind of gone. You know, Nvidia can keep paying for a bunch of companies to get in mediocre performance, but outside of a few titles, it's going to be really obvious. And in the short term, everyone's going to be looking for solutions that the haves and the have-nots. If only a couple of % of people have the ability to run it, no software developer who wants to sell software is going to be targeting those features, right? So they've gotten themselves out of the market, right? There's no amount of digging that they're going to be able to keep themselves competitive, other than constantly convincing consumers that 10% more performance versus the competitors is worth paying, you know, 50% more money for, and then having to do it again every year and a half or every 2 years. And it's a case of fool me once, shame on you. I think people learn after a while that, like, wow, the cost I have to keep putting into this one company, it's ridiculous. And this is the difference in a platform where the individual players have to make their money. They have to sell silicon annually, right? Case in point was my Intel chipset. They gimped me, got in mediocre performance. They cut off my cache because the new chips that were coming out were vastly better. So they actually took away the bit of the die that whenever you release a new CPU and you can't guarantee you're going to hit a certain speed, you put a lot of cache on it. Cache guarantees you a certain amount of performance. Runs very hot though. Once you figure out the rest of the die, you generally build it so it runs cooler. Either fabrication shrink or whatever reason, you can actually then make the CPU speeds go up and up and up. So usually you get a little bit less cache in the later models when they're going for higher speed. So what they did is they were releasing a couple of generations on from my platform. They went, oh, hang on, these CPUs aren't anywhere near as good as those CPUs at certain functions. And so they did a firmware update. They released a security update. And this is a really important thing. It's happening over all of our platforms, our phones or whatever. You can expect anything that's out of date when these companies need to sell you new hardware, that they'll just magically release a security update for a theoretical security flaw, and they're allowed to absolutely make getting in mediocre performance, make your hardware run a lot less effectively. So the Intel CPUs, in my case, they took away the cache. They did it over several occasions. At BIOS level, they would flash my motherboard. They actually broke a couple of my machines accidentally because Microsoft's not a very stable platform. You shouldn't be mucking around with firmware updates on anything, but they can just forcibly roll them out. So look, we're talking about a PC platform which has got all the hardware players are going to force you forward constantly. Well, not all of them. There are ethical companies, but I'm just trying to put the writing on the wall and just warn you. Microsoft is the sort of company that will put out a DirectX update to, you know, after 20 years of not changing anything, will change the locations of gear sticks, right? So that if you're playing Forza and first gear and sixth gear are all of a sudden reversed because they've done that and they know that they're going to absolutely stuff your game up with its optimization again because something changed and everything. Like, you could never fire the game up twice reliably without huge amounts of downtime. If you're a gamer and you value your entertainment time, having such a caustic platform at any given moment that can just be forced on you, where anything can be broken or taken away from you, just because they've got to keep making money, right? And they've got to keep making it so it's uncomfortable, right? And that's what they're going for. Just make it uncomfortable so it's better on console. There's a reason why they make the game experience just a little bit janky on PC. That pre-caching shaders, yeah, we can say that's needed, but maybe it is once, maybe. Consoles don't seem to be doing it. What's that all about? Yeah, okay, it's because they got a stable platform. But yeah, on the PC space, the amount of different ways that they can make it so that your money will be ineffective, they will need to keep taking it off you. They don't care how much time you waste. If entertainment is meant to be entertaining, what are you doing? Like, you actually want a platform that's stable, you actually want something that you get value for your money, and none of these players are going to let you get value for your money. None of these things are optimized to the metal. Okay, we can understand that's just part of the industry and that's just part of the nature of there being lots of different hardware configurations, but the nature of, you know, if you're playing Wonder Boy and you can walk left really smoothly, but because of DirectX, you can't walk to the right without jank, or if you play Motorfest, like I was on a 24 teraflop card, twice the power of an Xbox, but there's jank driving down the road, it's unplayable. I'd rather play it at 30 frames a second on a PlayStation 5 because it's smooth. It's actually quite nice. Versus PC jank, that duka. Please be aware, PC gaming.